Well, let me take this off because I'm not really preaching today. So I'm just going to share with you all a little bit about the trip that we had to the Philippines and different things that went on. Let me just check. Might be a little easier. See if this mic works. I don't know if that's might be easier for me to talk. Okay, just can you hear me? Good. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. As you know, the Philippines are in the Pacific. It's actually just south of Taiwan, and the part of the Philippines next. The part of the Philippines that I was back up one. The part of the Philippines it's the northern island. It's the island of Luzon, and that's a marking of the island of Luzon. If you see at the top part, you see the two mountains. You see it kind of like forms a head up there, and you see the two mountain ranges and the valley in the middle. I was spent the first week in the valley in the middle up there, and in Cabagan in the province of Isabela. Right now, evidently, there are a lot of American soldiers on the very northern edge of the island, and they are there because of the Chinese activities. So, in fact, I even saw about 4 busloads of American soldiers while I was there. And so, you don't hear about that much, but as you can see, it's a very fruitful plain. It's kind of a very large farm area, a lot of farm territory. And then the other area I went to is if you go to the south of it, and you see where, if you go to the bottom of the island, right there where there's a bay at the bottom, I'm trying to figure out. You see the big valley there, and then you see that bay, and then you come down a little further to the very bottom. That area is Manila, the very bottom of that island, and it's actually kind of like New York and other big cities. They call it the metropolitan Manila area because it's multiple cities all grown up together. And when you fly in, you see high rises here, high rises there, high rises everywhere. And the traffic is if you're going anywhere, you basically plan to take 2 hours, even if it's just a few kilometers, because the traffic is so thick down there. So it's basically a large metropolitan area down in the south. So the first week I was in kind of the countryside. The second week I was in the city. There. Next. These are the folks I was visiting. We were getting ready for graduation. These are the folks that you see me, my regalia. There is no air conditioning, by the way, and it's up in the 90s and above. And now I noticed theirs were made out of lighter cloth. But these are the folks we're dealing with. On the right-hand side is Vida Gingham, and she's a doctor, and she teaches at the institute there also, but she's also a science doctorate, and she used to work in the forestry department of the Philippine government, and she really, one of the things that I presented had to do with genetics, and she understood what I was talking about very well. So that's Vida Gingham, and she's the wife of Jimmy Gingham, Guillermo Gingham, and he also has a doctorate, but he's a doctor of divinity, and he is the head of the institute and also the head of the church. He'd be kind of like our president in the States. President Piggott, but they actually call him bishop, so he's the bishop, and he's over all the churches and the ministries that I visited while I was there. Then you see the really pale face in the middle, and then you see Noel Gingham. He's actually Brother Gingham's brother, and he's also a teacher there. He has his doctor of divinity or doctor of ministry. And then you have, you'll love this name, her son, On. It's kind of an interesting name, her son. That's the way I remember to spell it. It's her son, all one word. And he is the head of the Bible Institute there in in Cabogan. He also teaches at the Isabella University there, and he's also in the forestry department there. But he's still teaching. Vita has actually retired. And so those are our primary faculty that we had there. And us getting ready for the service. Now you can go on YouTube and go to the college page and actually watch the service if you want. It was a nice service that we had. Next, this is the faculty and all the graduates. You see the graduates in the background. We had 12 graduates all back there, and I learned a lot of names while I was there. But anyways, you see the 12 graduates. Daniel, the second one, anyways, I won't go through all of them all because I get them confused. I have to think through them all. But we had a very good graduation service on June 9th. We were able to, the funds were raised to not only give them the diplomas, but we also gave them an ESV study Bible, each one. All those men in the background are pastor or training, or actually pastoring or working in the ministry in some form. Now, also another thing about these guys, many of them already have bachelors and are already also doing secular jobs. The guy at the very right-hand side is Ray, and his wife is a major judge in the area, and he is in charge. He is the Secretary of Development in the area, so he's kind of like he's second to the governor in the region. Got to know him well. Then there's several others here that we'll get to know some of them as we go through. But you notice he's working full time for the government, but he's also pastoring. Almost all of them are doing multiple jobs that way. Next. This is me with Renee Allen and his wife. He was very. You sometimes, one thing about a lot of American students, you make comments on their papers, and with Grand Canyon, I had a lot of people how dare you make these comments on my paper? He was the exact opposite. He was appreciative of all the comments and the things that I pointed out to him and how I helped him write and how, it just helped him to be better. He was so appreciative. I just couldn't imagine. It was just like, whoa. After all these American students complaining about it, it was kind of refreshing to have a student who actually wanted to learn and was learning and really excelled as a result of the work the interaction that we had with him. Next. This is Dr. Noel with his wife there, and one of the things about it, he's Jimmy's brother, and I'll share this with you. As we were traveling all over the place, Jimmy said, yeah, I'm related to the mayor here, I'm related to the mayor there. Oh, this hospital, the owner of the hospital is a relative to me, and he looks exactly like me. So when I go in, people start coming to me asking medical questions. I'm not. And so he's like, he's talking about how he's, different folks. And then later on, it kind of tickled me. He told the story that I think he took Norris McDaniel, who's a Southern Methodist minister, to a prison. And while he was in the prison, all the prisoners were his cousins. So he was literally related to almost everybody, it seemed, at times. Next. Now, I took this picture. I did not get the picture that I really wanted. It's just this so much. That is a road, that is a street road in a town. That's actually the size of a 2-lane road in the town. Okay? You notice something about it? No lines in the middle. It's basically as wide as our driveways. This car that I'm riding in is not as big as the Expedition, probably as big as your truck. How's your truck doing? Yeah, but anyways, it could continue on. Okay, but anyways, one of the first things that I went to was a 25-year anniversary. They celebrate, in their churches, they celebrate every anniversary since the founding of the church, and they have a big to-do. The day that I went to here, this was the first day. Yeah, this it kind of blurs together. But anyways, on this particular day, I ate 5 meals because of all the places I went to. But here is not Michael Picard. It's Jesse, I think it is. This is Jesse. He's one of the graduates of Southern Methodist College, and he was giving the sermon there. The church, I should have gotten back, but the church is decorated very nicely, but it really has no walls. It's just basically a bunch of columns with a roof over it. Well, those are curtains in the back for the decoration, for the backdrop of the sermon, but everything else is open. Next. And here you see the people, the congregation with several of the local ministers there. You see myself there with Brother Jimmy anyways. Yeah, I should have brought them. I have them at my office. They gave the dignitaries these big flowery medallions, if you want to call them that. They're not really medallions, but they're a flower decorated with the event in the middle. And so they always gave, so I came back with quite a few of those things. But anyway, so they gave the dignitaries those, and each one is a little bit, each one's different based upon what your status is at the church. Next. This church here, these are the ministers that were attending here, but this was a church that was having its very first service. And that was right after the one that we just went to. And they were having it at a gymnasium, was where they were having their first service. Next. And here you see the people gathered for the service. The worship service with people off to the side. Next. This was they were actually dedicating or commissioning this young couple into the ministry at this time. And so I think this was Leonardo Benigno and his wife and child. And so Jimmy was commissioning him at this service, and he would become the pastor of this particular church. Next. Here you have a group from one of the other sister churches there that came to sing. And you can at the celebration, this was from Michael Picot's church. And it was a choir of ladies, and they did an excellent job in the singing. Next. Now, another place that I went to, and other places that I went to, this right there, what you're looking at is actually a church building. And what they're talking about here is they're talking about completing those columns and then putting cross beams and making a permanent roof before the rainy season gets started in full. And so they're kind of discussing what they have to do to get that ready. Next. And, but anyways, this is a house nearby, and I want you to take a look at something. You see the house looks, very rough, but do you see something very modern there besides the motorcycle? That's satellite TV. Okay, there's a blue disc up there, that's satellite TV. Okay, but so here you're out in the middle of nowhere, and the people have satellite TV. It was very interesting in the Filipino apartment. They had a big TV set, and we didn't turn around, but they wanted to watch basketball. They wanted to watch, they're very big into the, is it NBA's playing right now? Well, they're actually bigger into basketball. Yeah. And so they wanted to watch a basketball game. So what they did was they connected their cell phone to the TV and watched the basketball game through their cell phone. They didn't even have it connected to, anything else. They just, that's what they did. Next. This is another church that's under construction. This is kind of the typical design of a church that they use. You see the slanted roof. It's kind of an imitation of a wood design. The only problem that I found with it is that they don't have vents on the higher side for the hot air to go out. So it's evidently the design was designed to let the hot air out with the wood, but they haven't figured out how to do it with the concrete yet. I hope, I did not put the restroom picture in there. Yes and no. Let me, when we get, I think if by the end I have not had the restroom picture in, which I don't think I put it in, I struggled with the pictures last night. I had a hard time getting them off my phone so I could use them. But I'll tell you about the restrooms toward the end, okay? If I don't touch that, I'll tell you about that. Next. Then now this area is farming. The big product in this area is rice. They actually have short grain rice, and they literally eat rice morning, noon, and supper. They have rice for breakfast, they have rice for lunch, they have rice for supper. Basically, the rice is a staple, and they bring out all sorts of dishes that you just add to the rice. Next, here you see a man working his rice field. You see him in the water, and you can see that some of the rice fields are already grown, so they've already harvested some, and now they're replanting others. Next, here you see people working in the rice field planting right now. Now, I was a little confused because they kind of said to me what they're doing is there's rice in there, but they're actually pulling it up to put into other fields. So they're actually, I guess the first time they do it, it's really tight, and then they go back through, they pull it, and they spread it out over other fields. Next. That's that road again. Next. Here's a highway up in Luzai. You see a motorcycle coming the other way. I did not get the pictures that I wanted there. Next. This is a bridge. You're going to love this story. They spent 10 years building this bridge, okay? During the building point, all the government officials wanted to have their picture taken with it, and they were all so proud of it. Now, you may notice something about this bridge, is that where are we? We're on the ground. Next. Because 1 month after they had it built, Fayetteville. In fact, two local pastors were driving on the road when it happened, and a big truck crossed over it, and it fell. And one pastor got across the other side before it fell. The other pastor was able to stop. He stopped. He got out of his car to signal people to stop, not to go. A motorcyclist went around him, and he went over the bridge and fell. And he asked the guy later, "Why didn't you stop when I told you to, when I was signaling you to stop?" He says, "I thought you were trying to rob me." So. No, it was poorly built. They did not build it right. Yeah, well, during rainy season, the water can get very high. In fact, that's one of the things they're dealing with, that the water can really flood the areas. And people were telling me how the water during the last monsoon, water that actually affected them very badly, got up to about the height of the communion table. But that bridge took 10 years to build and 1 month to collapse. It's been sitting, this will be probably 2 years now. Well, they're arguing over who's responsible. Now, no politician wants their name associated with the bridge. Well, this is hopefully the Edison Bridge over the Edison that they're building here in Orangeburg doesn't do this. But anyways, they said afterwards that when they admitted afterwards that they could see the cracks in the concrete and everything when they dedicated the bridge. But anyways, so you didn't see the politicians on that. But they just finally got the truck that was crashed in it out of there just recently. So, but anyways, next. Now this is a farm field. You can see they not only do rice, but they also have corn. They have a lot of corn they plant and wheat they plant in this area. But you can see the sense of how wide this valley is. Okay. Next. Now, that's the truck that I was in is the one that's orange and blue, orange and black, orange and blue, but it's about the same size as that blue thing. Yeah, it's a Nissan something. Yes, it is a three-wheel vehicle, and I intentionally took a picture of it because of it. The motor on that thing is interesting. But anyways, this is a farm vehicle. This is a vehicle that the farmers build pretty much themselves. And if I had the pictures that I wanted, I would show you this engine being used several different ways. That engine in that farm thing is used as an electric generator. They have it on the side of the building, and they'll actually start electric and give the building electricity. It's used as a tractor engine to pull things around. It's used as you see an engine for this thing, which is kind of their farm vehicle where they put stuff in and they take things around. And it is a three-wheel vehicle. And it's also used as the motor for their plows. So the same engine is used in all those different ways. So it's quite interesting because I was sitting there, they said, well, we need to, the electricity's out, so we'll go start up our generator. I looked at the generator, and it had a headlight on it. You're like, going, okay. So anyway, then I found out, oh yeah, it's the same engine that they use for this, they use for that, they just use it. So you Bruce, with a lawnmower business, you'd be in business, man. Well, no, I didn't really have a lot of, the mosquitoes were not bad. I was kind of surprised. at that. I don't know if they've done something about it, but then again, the water there is mostly running very fast. So that may be part of it. So there's not a lot of standing water. There's not, well, except for the rice paddies, that would have standing water. Yeah, they do. Yeah. Well, they're used to it, and they evidently scare them out pretty regularly when they go through. They have a lot of water buffalo, and they actually, I saw several people riding water buffaloes around. Next. This is one of the churches that I visited, and that's the pastor right there. They had their 15th anniversary. You can see how simple the structure is. It's just basically a concrete wall with a vent, with in this case, a bamboo rafters and an aluminum or tin roof. And you can see that that's actually designed to let the heat out because you can see the various parts of it. Next. Here's another church, the sanctuary there. This is Michael Picat, who's sitting to my right. He was one of our former students, graduates. And you see, he's actually in charge. He's kind of like what I am, except he does more. He's kind of a vice president, but he's also in charge of evangelism. They have a district superintendent of evangelism who plans and works evangelistic events throughout the area, for the churches of that area. Next. Here we are sitting there relaxing at a Sukkot booth. It's basically, they have them all over the place, and it's amazing how cool it is in there. It's just a bamboo roof, and everything's made by bamboo, but it's actually much cooler than the tin roofs and the other things, or even the houses. Yeah, it's kind of like a teepee. Yeah, it works well. It's not very big. It's basically big enough for one table, and you just sit around. Next. This I found interesting. This is at one of the churches, and you look at it, you may not figure out what it is, but you see that little white box? No, that white box is actually a light switch. And it's on the outside, so to protect it from the rain. Instead of protecting from the rain, they have a plastic, what was a plastic water bottle on top of it, so they can turn it on and off. Yeah. Next. This is another church. This is at the University Church, the church that's near the university. It's University Kavagan Bible Church. Community Bible Church. That's Dr. Ong there. This is the church that he pastors. And that's his son Samuel. And that's his wife. And this is the church that he pastors at. And I spoke there the first Sunday that I was there. And next, this is the young men of his church. And yes, I am drinking hot coffee. So you have the young men there from the church there. Some of them are actual students for the college. Some of them are, as you can tell, a little younger, but this is the men of that church. Next. This is some of the students that all these guys are Southern Methodist students. Yeah. And we're just having a good time of fellowship in the pastor's office there. Next. This is one of the things that I did while I was in the Philippines was take a visit to the Asian Theological Association headquarters there in Manila and looking into getting them to accredit our program in Asia. In other words, that this would be an agency that would accredit our degrees that we grant there in the Philippines. And so we had a very good meeting with him. The guy in the middle is Alex. As typical academic, he has their books stacked up everywhere throughout. In fact, he gave us a whole stack of books, and I've been reading through some of them that he had there. But the man on the far right, I guess, your left. On your left is Benjamin, and he was the pastor of the Manila church, the Cubao church. And he was the one who took me around, and his son was actually the one in charge of being my, I guess you could call him valet, helper, making sure I didn't get in any trouble type thing. Yes, Bruce. Now, they speak, Philippines has two official languages, English and Tagalog. They speak both. Now, when I was there, I went out of my way to learn how to say hello. Problem was, everywhere I went, they said hello a different way. It was a different language. So after about the fourth variation, and some of them were very different, it's like, okay, I give up on this. I'll stick with the one. Because I mean, they're all multilingual. Because you go a few miles, even in a flat plain area, and you have a different language because there's a different tribe in that area. And let me try if I can get this. What's the language Jimmy speaks? It's Tagalog, I can't remember. I can't remember right now, sorry. But to just give you, kind of have a little fun with them, there's Kabagan, and that Kabagan, they speak. What's the Bible he was trying to, what was the Bible that he was trying to translate? See if I can find it. It's I had a little fun with him on this. Yes. I want to see if I can. See if I can get it right here for you. See if I can get it right here quickly for it. Ibano, okay? Their language is, the language he speaks is Ibano, okay? And basically it means the people along the river. There's another place that's up in the mountain, it's Imalo or something like that, and that's the mountain people. And they served me one dish that was Ikala, and I looked at him and says, "What people is that?" They said, no. Because they said E means people. So Ibano, the language of the Ibanos. So it's very, so they speak multiple languages there. And some places, the national language is Tabagan or Filipino, we would probably call it Filipino and English. So they all speak English and they all speak Tabagan. And it's now Tabagan has a lot of English and a lot of Spanish words in it. So as a result, because they were a Spanish colony for several centuries, and so as a result, I could pick up the topic they were talking about oftentimes. And what was interesting, when they were talking about the number of something, like the number of people, they'd use the English number. If they were talking about money, they'd use the Spanish number. And then they had another, so it's kind of like, okay. So, depending on what was going on, they flipped back and forth between various languages. Next. One of the things that broke my heart is that in the Philippines, there are a lot of cults. The Mormons seem to have a church a temple in every town. Then this is a Mormon place that's built by the Mormons. The thing that's interesting, there are Mormon missionaries, but for the most part, in most places, it's just the building and the caretaker. The Jehovah's Witnesses, I didn't get any of theirs, but the Jehovah's Witnesses are everywhere also. And then there's a national church that is kind of a combination of Christianity, political party, and the Masons there, called it translates the Church of Christ, but it's not related to the Church of Christ here in the States. And it's a very active, very wealthy church. Next. And that's a Catholic. Catholics are also very big there. Next. This is at Montalban Church. That's their youth group there. I shared with their youth group in this location. You can tell because of the way they're doing it. They'd always take one serious picture and then one where everybody did some other pose. While I was there, I had my picture taken more in the first few days than in my entire life. But anyways, they just love pictures. Next. These are some of the ministers or church leaders in the Church of Manila, the Cabal Bible Community Church. And you see they're all young men. Melbourne is on your right. And then Don is on your left. And then Eon is the guy in the red shirt. And I don't remember the other two guys' shirts. But those are four guys. The apartment that I stayed in the Philippines was a small apartment. It was on the 5th floor, no elevator. And the room they gave me was an air-conditioned room. There was 2 bedrooms. I was in one. There was another bedroom, and then there was a living room. And then you had a little kitchenette. And then you had a toilet room, and then you had a shower room. And the hallway between the two was where your sink was. Okay, next. That it? Okay, so I'll tell you the bathroom situation there. Everywhere you went, now Jimmy's house, they did have running water most of the time, so it kind of worked like it did here, except there was no hot water. So your showers were always cold, which wasn't, it took a little bit to get adjusted to because you're usually so hot, and then you go to a cold shower, you really feel it. Now, the way it typically worked there in most of they would have one room where the commode was. Okay, you'd go in there and there'd be a toilet. And I do have a picture of it, and I would have shared it with you, but believe me, I was having difficulties with getting pictures off the phone. I might be able to share it with you on the phone afterwards. But the way it worked was you went in there, you did your business, and you had a little bucket, so that's where you put your toilet paper and other stuff into. And then when it came time to flush, There'd be a bigger bucket with a ladle. The bigger bucket would have water in it, and if it didn't have water, there would be a little spigot there that you could put water into it. You'd fill it up, you'd take the ladle, and you'd throw it as hard as you can into the toilet. And that was the way you took care of business. And that was pretty much everywhere. Even in Manila, you had to do it that way. Even in the apartment that I was in, you had to do it that way. And so you always had to, reach over and throw that water in as hard as you could, and if it didn't go down, you had to get another out and throw it in until you finally got everything through. Talk about being cheap on the water. But anyways, it's kind of an interesting thing. Manila is a very, it's like, I've seen improvement, it just felt more like Manila by itself. The area of Manila is over, I think, around Manila by itself is around 11 million, but when you include the metropolitan area, it's almost 20 million people. And it's like depending upon where you are, the city has grown faster than its infrastructure, because you would go to places and you could see they had all the facilities back in the 60s, but now they were doing,
He married a Filipino.
Mm-hmm.
You don't buy land
Right.
and if you get it, this particular fellow, he's up his home assembly. He used to get along great. He hunts and all this stuff. He's retired. He should pack his lunch. She don't nag him. Anything he wants. I mean, she's just a devoted wife. And she has a lot of family. Over there, that family made sure that this fellow, they came to visit. They made sure nobody tried to rob him, because see, over there, you can go and live over there with a little deep in,
Yeah, I was treated like a king while I was there. There's no question about the hospitality and the generosity. There is, but I really wasn't around it. There's police everywhere. The one set of pictures I just could not get was the driving. In the Philippines, nobody drives what we would consider fast. Okay? And the one thing there's no place for road rage. Okay? And on top of that, there's one thing you do not want to do in the Philippines is do a sudden move. Because everybody's driving according to what you're doing, and you're driving according to what they're doing. And so like one day, first few days I was with Jim and he'd be driving down. He was always passing on the right. He was going fast for Filipino standards. So he was always passing on the right. And, I said, sometimes I wondered because he didn't, on the left, he passed on the left, sorry, constant passing on the left. And I finally, I noticed that maybe the reason that he was always passing on the left is because on the right, if you weren't careful, there might be a parked car. And so if you passed on the right, you might end up hitting a parked car. So one day, these two motorcycles passed us on the right. And I said to Jimmy, I noticed that you've always passed on the left and never on the right, but these two guys did. And he said, oh, yeah, that's right. And he started passing on both. But the way you go, in Manila, there are stoplights that are regulated by cameras. So if you run that stoplight, you will get a ticket. And there's no appeal. Okay? And it's pretty expensive. Now, everywhere else, this is the way it works. If you are in the main traffic and you come to an intersection, you keep going straight unless somebody nudges their way in front of you and blocks you. Okay? Then you stop and you let them go through, and then you start nudging until you cut through. If you come to an intersection that they're the heavy intersection and you're the lower one, you start nudging your nose out into it until you block the road, and then you go. And the motorcycles are going around you all the time. In fact, they actually form typically a third or fourth lane. There were, I probably saw only one accident while I was there, but there's no place for road rage, and you just kind of, everybody is just, as, everybody's calculating, how far they can move. Yeah, that's kind of how it is. But still, it takes, we went downtown from where we were to downtown, and I would say it wasn't but a little over 5 kilometers, but it still took us 2 hours in Manila. A kilometer is about a little over a mile, just a little over a mile, I think. So, but now in the northern region, it was different. Everything is kind of like here. Everything's so far apart that you drive much more quickly there, and you're passing. But at the same time, you come up to a major. There'll be 2 interstates that come together. Hey, guess what you have to do? Yeah, you get around better on a motorcycle because you get in between everything. And I even watched people go up the wrong way. There were certain exits they went up the wrong way and got on the road that way. But they basically you watch out for other people, and you determine whether you can get to spot X before they do, or if they're going to get that spot X before you do, and you determine what you're going to do from there. So if you don't realize you're going to be there after they get there, you stop. Yeah. Well, that was the Mormons. But the Jehovah's Witnesses, they did seem to have services, yeah.
They don't attend the Christianity service.
No. Yeah. They're cults and different things like that. But so anyways, that's kind of a Philippine, I visited, one of the pictures that I wanted to show you is that when they harvest the rice, they take it and they put it in the road. And I said, do they have a problem with us driving over it? I said, no, that way helps helps work the husk off of it. So you kind of be just rice all the way across the road, and you'd like, okay, you just drive over it. That's how they made it, yes.
Missionaries, all the examples in the 80s and 90s, working hard, discipling activity, and getting churches. So if you gave all an example back in the 80s and 90s, this is the result. Churches are the result of their work in churches.
Yeah. So, these are, and they're hoping to plant 100 churches before 2030, new churches, and they're making plans on that. And so they have, so that's what they're working on right now. They have the fellowship of their churches actually have them in Luzon, in Manila, down on another island, and then they also have churches now in Canada. They follow their folks over there.
Very easy to get along with each other.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're easy. We at least was around me, they were very easy to get along with folks. Now you have to understand the Filipinos are also, when you get around them, you realize they're multinational people. As you talk about, you have Americans marrying them, but there's also Chinese, and a lot of them have served in Dubai and Saudi Arabia and other places throughout the world. So they have been, they're a lot of them are very, you'd come to a shack, okay, like that shack, and all of a sudden you find out the guy's retired from working in Dubai. So he probably has a large bank account somewhere, but he's back home now living as in his childhood. But so he's kind of a very interesting, you can't really assume just because the person's in a shack that they are very poor. they may actually have quite a bit. Yeah, they just like the simple life, the simple farm life, and go on. But that, it's a very, they're very, I put it to you this way, their driving is very accommodating. And so it's just the big things that you don't want to you don't want to go extremely fast. And the second thing is you don't want to do any sudden moves. Because if you do a sudden move, you're going to probably somebody's going to hit you because they weren't prepared for that. And so anything you do, you kind of broadcast it that that's what you're up to. And they will work with you, even if it's bumper to bumper or side to side traffic.
Humidity band is pretty decent.
It's about like here. Yeah. Now, the wealthy people will have air conditioning. It was cooler there? Okay. Okay. So it was a little cooler. Now, in the city, it was actually, I didn't have any sinus. When I went to Manila, I did have sinus problems. I think it was because of the smog there. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's a nice summary of my trip for everybody, and hopefully we'll work on that later. All right.